Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the EDF Vigilant, watching the stars through the main view screen. His patrol ship was 3 days into a routine sweep of the outer solar system when something changed. The sensors started, beeping in a way he had never heard before. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings out here," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. She was the ship's communications officer and had been monitoring space traffic for the past 6 years. "There are 3 objects moving toward us from the direction of Pluto. They're big and they're not showing up in our ship registry." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. In all his years patrolling this sector, he had never seen unregistered ships this far out. "How big are we talking about, Amy?" "Each one is about twice the size of our ship, sir, and they're moving fast, really fast." Amy's fingers danced across her control panel. "I'm trying to get a better read on them, but their hulls seem to be made of something that doesn't show up clearly on our scans." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. Unknown ships in Earth's outer system was not something that happened every day. In fact, it had never happened in his entire career. "Send a standard greeting message. Let them know who we are and ask them to identify themselves." Amy nodded and began transmitting. "Unknown vessels. This is the Earth Defense Force ship Vigilant. Please identify yourselves and state your business in this system." They waited. The 3 ships continued their approach, now clearly visible on the main screen as sleek, dark vessels, with strange curves and angles that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Morrison had never seen ship designs like these before. "Still no response, Captain," Amy reported. "But I'm picking up some kind of scanning activity. They're definitely looking us over." Morrison stood up and walked to the tactical station where Sergeant Pete Collins was monitoring their weapon systems. "Pete, what's our status?" "All systems green, Captain. But I have to tell you, those ships are carrying some serious firepower. My sensors are picking up energy signatures I've never seen before." Before Morrison could respond, Amy's station erupted in noise. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's not in any language I recognize, but the computer is trying to translate." The main screen flickered and then showed the interior of one of the alien ships. Morrison found himself looking at a creature that was definitely not human. It stood, about 7 feet tall with dark purple skin and 4 arms. Its head was elongated with large black eyes that seemed to look right through him. When it spoke, the computer's translation came through the speakers in a cold, mechanical voice. "Primitive vessel, you will surrender immediately. I am War Commander Vexthara of the Zephyrian Empire. Your pathetic world has been selected for conquest." Morrison blinked, trying to process what he was hearing. Did she just say conquest? The alien continued speaking. "We have observed your primitive settlement and found it suitable for our needs. Your species will serve as workers in our mines and factories. Resistance is pointless. We have conquered 47 worlds before yours." Morrison stepped forward, his training kicking in despite the shocking nature of the situation. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Earth's territorial space. State your intentions clearly." The alien's expression didn't change, but something that might have been amusement flickered in its black eyes. "Your territorial space?" it said. "Primitive creature, you do not understand. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We take what we want. Your little world will fall just like all the others." Amy was recording everything, her fingers moving quickly across her controls. Morrison was glad she was thinking clearly, because this conversation would be crucial evidence for the brass back on Earth. "We don't want any trouble," Morrison said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But we will defend ourselves if necessary. Perhaps we can find a peaceful solution to this situation." War Commander Vexthara made a sound that the computer translated as laughter. "Peaceful solution? You have 1 small ship against 3 of our war vessels. Your entire world has perhaps a few hundred ships like yours. We have seen this before on every world we have taken." Morrison felt anger rising in his chest. This alien creature was talking about enslaving his entire species, like it was nothing more than a business transaction. "You're making a big mistake if you think Earth is defenseless." "Am I?" Vexthara said. "Our scouts have been watching your world for many cycles. We have seen your military installations, 12 major bases, perhaps 500 combat vessels total. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. Your surrender is inevitable." Pete Collins looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, they think we only have 12 military bases and 500 ships total." Morrison realized with growing horror that these aliens had been watching Earth, but they had completely misjudged humanity's military strength. They had no idea what they were really facing. "You're wrong about our capabilities," Morrison said to the alien commander. "Earth has much more military strength than you realize." Vex Thara's forearms moved in what might have been a dismissive gesture. "All primitive species say this before they fall. Your resistance will last perhaps days before you surrender. It always does." "Look," Morrison said, "we're clearly having a misunderstanding here. Why don't you send a diplomat to Earth? We can work this out without anyone getting hurt." "The time for talking is over," Vexithera replied. "You have refused our generous offer of peaceful surrender. Now you will see the power of the Zephyrian Empire." The alien's image disappeared from the screen. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the Vigilant. "Captain, all 3 ships are powering weapons," Pete called out. "Energy levels are off the charts. Evasive maneuvers," Morrison ordered. "Amy, get a message to Earth Command right now. Tell them we have hostile aliens in the outer system and they're planning to invade." The Vigilant shook as the first alien weapon struck their shields. Morrison grabbed his chair as the lights flickered. "Shields down to 60%, Pete reported. "Captain, their weapons are incredibly powerful. I don't think we can take many more hits like that." Another blast rocked the ship. Morrison could smell smoke coming from damaged systems. "Amy, did you get that message out?" "Yes, sir. Transmitted on all emergency frequencies. Earth Command should have it in about 20 minutes. The third blast nearly threw Morrison to the floor. Warning lights flashed red throughout the bridge. "Shields failing," Pete called out. "Hull breach on deck 3. Morrison made a quick decision. They couldn't win this fight, but they could gather intelligence. "Full retreat. Get us out of here. But keep our sensors on those ships. We need to learn everything we can about their technology." The Vigilant turned and began accelerating toward Earth, but the alien ships didn't pursue. Morrison watched them on the rear sensors as they resumed their patrol pattern, apparently satisfied that they had made their point. "Captain," Amy said, quietly, "they really think we only have 12 military bases and 500 ships." Morrison nodded grimly. "Yeah, and when they find out the truth, they're going to be in for the shock of their lives." As the damaged Vigilant limped toward home, Morrison thought about what War Commander Vexthera had said. 47 conquered worlds. The aliens clearly thought this would be conquest number 48. They had no idea that Earth was different from every other world they had faced. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that humanity didn't concentrate all their military power in a few obvious places. They were about to discover that Earth was an entire planet armed and ready for war. Morrison smiled grimly as he watched Earth grow larger on the view screen. The aliens wanted a fight, and they were certainly going to get one. But it wasn't going to be the easy victory they were expecting. War Commander Vexithara stood in the center of her ship's command deck, studying the holographic display that showed the third planet of this star system. The encounter with the primitive human vessel had gone exactly as expected. One small ship, basic weapons and predictable tactics, just like every other world they had conquered. "Scout Leader Crixtal, report," she commanded. The shorter alien stepped forward, his 3 eyes focused on the data pad in his hands. "War Commander, our deep scans of the human world are complete. We have identified their primary military installations and cataloged their defensive capabilities." Vexithara nodded. This was always the most important part of any conquest. Understanding the enemy's strength meant the difference between a quick victory and a costly war. "Show me what you have found." The holographic display changed to show Earth in detail. Red markers appeared at various locations across the planet's surface. Crixtal pointed to each one as he spoke. "The humans have concentrated their military power in 12 major installations. The largest appears to be here," he said, indicating a location on the largest continent. "Our sensors detected approximately 40 combat vessels at this facility, along with what appear to be aircraft and ground vehicles. And the others?" Bexathara asked. Similar patterns. Each major base has between 20 and 50 ships, various aircraft, and ground forces. In total, we estimate the humans possess approximately 500 combat vessels of various sizes. Bexathara studied the display. 500 ships was more than some worlds they had conquered, but far less than others. The number was well within acceptable parameters for a standard invasion force. What about their technology level? She asked. Primitive but functional, Krikstal replied. Their weapons use basic energy projection and chemical explosives. Their ships appear to be powered by nuclear fusion, which is adequate but not advanced. Most importantly, their scanning technology is limited. They were unable to detect our ships until we were quite close. This last point was crucial. If the humans couldn't detect Zephyrian ships at long range, it would make the invasion much easier. Surprise attacks would be possible against most of their installations. Ground forces? Vexthara asked. Difficult to estimate precisely, but based on the size of their installations and comparing to other conquered worlds, we project approximately 2 million active military personnel across their entire planet. Vexthara clicked her mandibles in satisfaction. 2 million soldiers was actually quite large for a single world, but the Zephyrian Empire had faced larger numbers before. What mattered was that the humans appeared to have all their forces concentrated in obvious locations. Very good. Prepare your detailed report for transmission to High Command. Include recommendations for invasion force size. Already prepared? War Commander. Based on our analysis, I recommend a standard Type C invasion force. 200 warships, 50,000 ground troops, and standard orbital bombardment capability. Vexathara considered this. A Type C force was what they had used on most of their recent conquests. It was large enough to overwhelm local defenses, but not so large as to be wasteful of resources. Agreed. Send the report immediately. While Krikstal transmitted their findings across the vast distance to Zephyrian space, Vexthara continued studying the human world. Something about it bothered her, though she couldn't quite identify what. The planet was larger than most they had conquered, and it had a much larger population. But large populations usually meant larger militaries, not the relatively small force they had detected. War Commander, interrupted Communications Officer Zeflock. We are receiving a response from High Command. Display it. The hologram shifted to show the stern face of Admiral Morgeth, one of the Empire's most senior military leaders. His scarred features showed the experience of dozens of successful conquests. War Commander Vexathara, your report has been reviewed and approved. You are authorized to proceed with conquest of the human world. Admiral Zekmor will command the invasion force and will arrive in your sector within 30 cycles. Vexathara felt a moment of disappointment. She had hoped to lead the invasion herself, but Admiral Zekmor was a logical choice. He had conquered more worlds than any other Zephyrian commander. Admiral Morgeth continued speaking. Your intelligence gathering has been exemplary. The human world appears to be a standard primitive settlement with predictable defensive patterns. Admiral Zekmor has been briefed and will implement a standard suppression strategy. The transmission ended, leaving Vexathara alone with her thoughts. In 30 cycles, the human world would fall. It would be conquest number 48 for the Zephyrian Empire, and like the 47 before it, the outcome was never really in doubt. Meanwhile, on the human world below, things were moving very differently than the aliens realized. Admiral Ben Davis stood in the main command center of Earth Defense Command, reading the report from Captain Morrison for the third time. The implications were staggering. Earth was facing an invasion by an alien empire that had already conquered 47 other worlds. How long before they attack? Asked General Lisa Brooks, the head of Earth's ground forces. Based on what Captain Morrison overheard, we have maybe a month, Davis replied. They're bringing in what they called an invasion force. What do we know about their capabilities? Brooks asked. Colonel Ryan Murphy, head of intelligence, stepped forward with a data pad. We've analyzed the weapon signatures from the attack on the Vigilant. Their technology is advanced, but not impossibly so. Our newest ships should be able to match their firepower, and our shields can handle their weapons. That's the good news, Davis said. The bad news is that they've been watching us and they think they know our military strength. Brooks raised an eyebrow. What do they think they know? According to Captain Morrison, they believe Earth has 12 major military bases and about 500 combat ships total. The room fell silent. Finally, Brooks started laughing. 12 bases? 500 ships? Do they have any idea how wrong they are? Davis smiled grimly. No, they don't. And that's going to be their biggest mistake. Murphy pulled up a holographic display of Earth. Unlike the alien's simple map with 12 red dots, this one showed the true scope of human military installation. Thousands of points of light covered every continent and ocean. They somehow missed 98% of our military infrastructure, Murphy said. They don't know about our submarine bases, our mobile forces, our reserve units, or our hidden installations. They think Norfolk Naval Base is our only major naval facility. What about our actual ship count? Brooks asked. Current active fleet strength is 2,400 combat vessels of all classes, Davis replied, with another 800 in reserve that could be activated within days. Brooks shook her head in amazement. So they think they're facing 500 ships when we actually have over 3,000 available? It gets better, Murphy said. They estimated our ground forces at 2 million personnel. Our actual active military personnel across all branches is 65 million, with another 200 million trained reserves. Davis walked to the window that looked out over the sprawling command complex. In the distance, he could see ships launching from the naval yards, while overhead, squadrons of fighters practiced formation flying. They're making the same mistake every conqueror in human history has made, he said quietly. They're underestimating their enemy. So what's our plan? Brooks asked. Davis turned back to face the room. Let them come. Let them think they're facing a small, weak world. When their invasion force arrives, they're going to get the surprise of their lives. Should we start mobilizing reserves? Murphy asked. Already done, Davis replied. Operation Rising Shield went into effect the moment we confirmed hostile alien contact. Every military unit on Earth is being quietly brought to full readiness. Brooks smiled. I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. Don't, Davis said. They've conquered 47 worlds. They've enslaved entire species. They came here expecting to do the same to us. He paused, looking at the display showing Earth's true military might. They're about to learn that humanity is different from every other species they've faced. In space above Earth, Captain Morrison's repaired ship continued its patrol. He thought about War Commander Vexithera's arrogant assumption that Earth would fall easily. The alien had no idea that she was about to face not just a planet with an army, but an entire world that was an army. The Zephyrians were coming, expecting easy conquest number 48. Instead, they were going to discover that Earth was ready for them. Admiral Zekmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, watching as the invasion fleet assembled in the darkness between stars. 200 Zephyrian warships hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant light of alien suns. It was a sight that had brought terror to 47 worlds, and soon it would bring terror to the humans as well. Fleet status report, he commanded. All ships ready for jump to human space, Admiral, replied his second-in-command, Captain Veltar. Ground forces are loaded and prepared for planetary assault. 50,000 of our finest warriors await your orders. Zekmore nodded with satisfaction. 50,000 Zephyrian soldiers had never failed to conquer a world. Combined with the orbital bombardment capability of 200 warships, no primitive planet could resist for long. What is our intelligence on the human defenses? He asked. Captain Veltar activated a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding space. War Commander Vexthara's reconnaissance was thorough, Admiral. The humans have 12 major military installations and approximately 500 combat vessels. Their technology is primitive but functional. Standard conquest pattern, then, Zekmore said. We will strike all 12 installations simultaneously, demonstrate our superior firepower, and demand surrender. Based on previous conquests, resistance should collapse within 3 to 5 cycles. The humans did attack one of our scout ships, Veltar noted. They may be more aggressive than some species we have faced. Zekmor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Aggression without capability is meaningless. A small animal may bare its teeth at a predator, but it still becomes prey. The Admiral walked to the main view screen and gazed out at his fleet. Each ship was a masterpiece of Zephyrian engineering, capable of reducing cities to ash from orbit. The humans had never seen anything like this level of firepower focused against them. "Begin the final jump sequence," he ordered. "It is time to add the human world to our empire." The fleet vanished in flashes of light, crossing the vast distance to Earth's solar system in moments. When they emerged near the outer planets, Admiral Zekmor expected to see empty space and a few patrol ships, just like War Commander Vexithara had reported. Instead, his sensors immediately detected something that made him pause. "Captain Veltar, are you reading this?" he asked, staring at his tactical display. "Admiral, I'm showing much more activity in this system than our intelligence suggested. There are ships moving near that large moon, and I'm detecting energy signatures from multiple locations." Zekmor frowned. This was not what the reconnaissance had indicated. "How many ships?" "Difficult to get an exact count, sir. At least 50, possibly more. They appear to be— Wait, Admiral, I'm detecting more ships decloaking near that orbital station." On the main screen, human vessels were indeed becoming visible as they dropped their stealth fields. Zekmor counted them quickly. 70, 80, 90 ships and still more appearing. "This is more than our intelligence suggested," he admitted, "but still manageable. 200 ships against less than 100 is acceptable odds." What Admiral Zekmor didn't realize was that he was seeing only the ships stationed in Earth's immediate orbital space. The human commanders had decided to show just enough strength to make the aliens pause, but not enough to reveal the true scope of Earth's defenses. On Earth, General Lisa Brooks stood in the main command center, watching the alien fleet on the big display screen. "They're here," she announced to the room full of military leaders. Admiral Ben Davis joined her at the display. 200 ships, just like our intelligence predicted. They're following the same pattern they used on other worlds. "Are our forces ready?" Brooks asked. Colonel Ryan Murphy looked up from his communication station. "All units are in position and standing by. Operation Rising Shield is fully active. We have forces mobilized on every continent." "What about the Navy?" Davis asked. Commander Steve Parker, representing the Pacific Fleet, stepped forward. "Admiral, we have 800 ships ready for immediate action in the Pacific alone. The Atlantic Fleet reports similar numbers. Our submarine forces are in position worldwide." "And the Air Force?" Major Tony Williams spoke up. "Every airbase on the planet is at full readiness. We have 15,000 aircraft fueled and armed. Pilots are in their cockpits waiting for the order." Brooks smiled grimly. "So while they think they're facing 500 ships and 12 bases, we actually have 3,200 active combat vessels," Davis finished. 4,800 active aircraft, and 65 million military personnel across all branches, plus the reserves," Murphy added. "Another 200 million people with military training who can be called up if needed." On the big screen, they could see the alien fleet beginning to move toward Earth. The ships were impressive, sleek, and dangerous looking, but there were only 200 of them. "Admiral," said Captain Maria Rodriguez, who had flown in from European Command, "my intelligence teams have been analyzing the alien ships. Each one is heavily armed, but they're designed for fighting ships like themselves. They're not prepared for the variety of weapons and tactics we can bring to bear." Davis nodded. "The aliens have been successful because they fight other alien species who think like they do. Centralized forces, predictable tactics, limited numbers, they've never faced humans before." "What makes us different?" asked Major Williams. "Everything," Brooks replied. "We don't put all our military power in one place. We don't have a single type of weapon or ship. We don't think like a hive mind. Every human nation developed its military independently, which means we have dozens of different approaches to warfare." Davis walked to another display that showed military activity across Earth. Green dots indicated active bases, and there were thousands of them. They expect to fight 12 installations. Instead, they're going to face military bases on every continent, in every ocean, and in hidden locations they never detected. Are we going to let them make the first move? Parker asked. Yes, Davis replied. Let them follow their standard plan. Let them attack what they think are our main bases. When they realize those are just a tiny fraction of our actual military strength, that's when we'll show them what Earth is really capable of. Back in space, Admiral Zekmore was growing more confused by the minute. His sensors kept detecting more human ships, but they weren't acting like the forces he usually faced. Instead of massing for a large battle, they seemed to be spread out across the entire system. Captain Veltar, I'm reading human ships near every planet and moon in this system. That's not a normal defensive pattern. Perhaps they're trying to protect multiple locations, Admiral. Some species attempt to defend everything and end up defending nothing effectively. Zekmore considered this. It was true that many worlds made the mistake of spreading their forces too thin. But something felt different about this situation. Admiral, called the sensor operator, I'm detecting more energy signatures from the planet's surface, much more than our intelligence indicated. Show me. The display zoomed in on Earth, and Zekmore saw thousands of points of light scattered across every continent. Each light represented some kind of military installation or energy source. This can't be right, he said. Our reconnaissance clearly showed only 12 major bases. Perhaps their technology is more advanced than we thought, Veltar suggested. They may have been hiding many of their installations. Zekmore felt the first stirring of doubt. In 47 previous conquests, intelligence had always been accurate. The Zephyrian Empire's scanning technology was the best in the galaxy. How could they have missed so much? Admiral, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from the human planet. Put it on screen. The display showed a human in military uniform. The translation system identified him as Admiral Ben Davis of something called Earth Defense Command. Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Davis. You are in violation of Earth's territorial space. We are prepared to defend ourselves. I strongly suggest you reconsider your invasion plans. Zekmore stepped forward. Human Admiral, I am Admiral Zekmore of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for conquest. Surrender now and your people will be treated with the mercy appropriate for a primitive species. Davis smiled, and something about that smile made Zekmore uncomfortable. Admiral Zekmore, I think you may be operating under some incorrect assumptions about Earth's defensive capabilities. We have studied your world carefully, Zekmore replied. We know your strength. Do you? Davis asked. Tell me, how many ships do you think we have? Approximately 500 combat vessels, Zekmore said confidently. Davis's smile widened. Admiral, you might want to take another look at your sensors. As if on cue, human ships began appearing throughout the solar system, not dozens or hundreds but thousands. They rose from hidden bases on moons, decloaked from stealth positions, and emerged from planets the aliens had thought were uninhabited. Admiral Zekmore stared in growing horror as his tactical display filled with red contacts representing human military vessels. The number climbed rapidly past 500, past 1,000, past 2,000. This is impossible, he whispered. Admiral Zekmore stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. The number of human ships continued climbing. 2,000, 3,000, and still more appeared as hidden vessels dropped their stealth fields across the entire solar system. This cannot be accurate, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Run a full diagnostic on all sensor systems immediately. Captain Veltar frantically worked at his console. Admiral, sensors are functioning perfectly. All readings confirmed. We are detecting 3,200 human combat vessels, and the count is still rising. Zekmore felt something he had never experienced in 47 conquests. Fear. Not just concern or caution, but genuine terror at what he was seeing. His invasion force of 200 ships was suddenly outnumbered by more than 15 to 1. Where did they all come from? He demanded. Our reconnaissance showed 500 ships maximum. On the main screen, Admiral Davis continued speaking, with that unsettling smile. Admiral Zekmore, I believe your intelligence may have been incomplete. Would you like me to explain what you're really facing? Zekmore wanted to cut the transmission, but he needed information. His entire fleet was now in mortal danger, and he had to understand how this had happened. Speak, he said simply. Your scouts observed 12 of our more obvious military installations, Davis began. What they didn't detect were the other 8,436 active military bases located across our planet and throughout this solar system. The bridge of the Dominion fell completely silent. Even the usual hum of equipment seemed muted as the alien crew tried to process what they had just heard. Davis continued calmly. You estimated our fleet strength at 500 vessels. Our actual count is 3,200 active combat ships, with another 800 in reserve that can be activated within hours. Zekmore's mandibles clicked nervously. This is impossible. No single world has ever possessed such military resources. Admiral, you've been conquering alien worlds, Davis replied. You've never faced humans before. Let me give you some numbers that might help you understand the situation. War. Commander Vexithara appeared on a secondary screen from her scout ship. Admiral, my sensors are confirming everything the human says. I count military installations on every continent of their world. There are underwater bases I never detected, hidden facilities in mountain ranges, and mobile platforms I mistook for civilian vessels. Davis nodded toward her image. War Commander, your reconnaissance was actually quite thorough for what you were looking for. The problem is that human military doctrine is fundamentally different from anything your empire has encountered before. Explain. Zekmore demanded. Every other species you've conquered centralizes their military power, Davis said. 1 or 2 main fleets, a few major bases, concentrated forces that are easy to identify and destroy. Humans learned long ago that centralized military power is vulnerable military power. On Earth, General Brooks watched the conversation from the command center. Around her, thousands of military personnel monitored the situation from bases the aliens were still discovering. Show them the real numbers, she said quietly to Davis. Admiral Davis nodded. Admiral Zekmore, you estimated our military personnel at 2 million soldiers. Our actual active military across all branches numbers 65 million personnel. The alien bridge crew began making sounds of distress. Several of Zekmore's officers stepped back from their stations as if the numbers themselves were weapons. That's impossible, Veltar said. No world can support that many soldiers. We also have 200 million trained reserves, Davis continued relentlessly. Citizens who have completed military service and can be recalled to active duty. In addition, our planet has 8 billion inhabitants, of whom approximately 400 million have received some form of military or combat training. Zekmore felt his legs go weak. He had brought 50,000 soldiers to conquer a world with over 60 million active military personnel and hundreds of millions more in reserve. You're lying, he said desperately. No species could maintain such numbers. Captain Jake Morrison's voice joined the conversation from his patrol ship. Admiral Zekmore, this is Captain Morrison. You destroyed my first ship, remember? I'm now commanding one of 300 vessels in just our lunar defense fleet. That's one small part of one defensive position. 300 ships at one base? Vexithara asked weakly. Luna Base is actually considered a minor installation, Morrison replied. Would you like to see our major naval facilities? As if, responding to his words, massive shapes began rising from Earth's oceans. Zekmore watched in horror as enormous vessels surfaced from beneath the waves. These weren't the small patrol ships his scouts had observed, but massive warships that dwarfed anything in his fleet. Those are our aircraft carriers, Davis explained casually. Each one carries between 80 and 100 combat aircraft. We have 47 of them currently active. 47 carriers, Veltar repeated numbly, each one larger than our flagship. Admiral, called the Dominion sensor operator, his voice shaking. I'm detecting massive underground installations opening across the human planet. Whatever's inside them is big, really big. On the view screen, Davis smiled again. Those would be our strategic missile silos. We have approximately 12,000 of them scattered across the planet. Each missile can carry multiple warheads capable of destroying a city-sized target. Zekmore grabbed the edge of his command console to steady himself. 12,000 missiles? Nuclear missiles, Davis clarified. Each warhead has the explosive power to devastate an area 50 kilometers in diameter. But why? Vexithara asked, from her ship. Why does one world need so much military power? Colonel Murphy appeared on another screen from Earth's command center. Because we're not one military, Admiral. We're dozens of separate nations, each with their own armed forces. What you're seeing is the combined military might of every human nation working together for the first time in our history. How many nations? Zekmore asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. 195 sovereign countries, Murphy replied, each with their own army, navy, and air force, each with their own weapons, tactics, and military traditions. Admiral, Davis gestured to someone off-screen. Admiral, I'd like you to meet some of my colleagues. The display split to show multiple human officers from around the planet. Each one wore different uniforms and insignia. This is Admiral Chen of the Chinese Navy, Davis said, indicating a stern-faced woman. She commands 800 vessels, in the Pacific Fleet alone. General Petrov of the Russian ground forces, he continued. He has 2 million soldiers under his direct command. Air Marshal Williams of the Royal Air Force, General Schmidt of the German Bundeswehr, Admiral Singh of the Indian Navy. I could go on, but I think you understand the pattern. Zekmore stared at the collection of human military leaders. Each one commanded forces larger than his entire invasion fleet. This is madness, he whispered. No world should need so much military power. We didn't build these forces to conquer other worlds, Admiral, Davis said gently. We built them to fight each other. For thousands of years, human nations have been preparing for war with other human nations. The only reason we never used our full combined military might is that we were too busy fighting among ourselves. Until now, added General Brooks, stepping into view. Your invasion has done something that has never happened before in human history. You've given every nation on Earth a common enemy. War Commander Vexithara's voice was barely audible. Admiral, what are your orders? Zekmore looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds without fear. Now they stared at him with expressions of pure terror. On his tactical display, more human ships continued appearing. The count had passed 4,000 and showed no signs of stopping. Admiral Zekmore, Davis said quietly, I want you to understand something. The force you're facing right now is just what we have ready for immediate deployment. If this conflict continues, we can mobilize additional forces that would multiply our current numbers by 10. 10 times larger? Veltar asked weakly. Our total war production capacity is designed to support a global conflict involving all 8 billion of our people, Davis explained. Admiral, you've made a critical error. You assumed Earth was like every other world you've conquered. But we're not an alien world with a small military. We're a warrior planet that's been preparing for total war for our entire civilization. Zekmore closed his eyes and tried to think. His fleet was surrounded by an enemy that outnumbered him 20-1, with the capability to increase those numbers dramatically. His 50,000 soldiers faced 65 million active troops with hundreds of millions in reserve. For the first time in Zephyrian military history, an invasion force was completely and utterly outmatched before the first shot was fired. Admiral Davis, he said finally, his voice hoarse with defeat. I believe we need to discuss terms. Admiral Zekmore sat heavily in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed his fleet completely surrounded by thousands of human vessels. Never in his long military career had he found himself in such a hopeless position. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, conqueror of 47 worlds, had finally met its match. Admiral Davis, he said into the communication channel, I request permission to speak with you privately. Of course, Admiral. I'll have my ship come alongside. Yours. We can meet in person if you prefer. Zekmore looked around his bridge at his demoralized crew. They had come here expecting easy victory, and instead found themselves facing the largest military force any of them had ever seen. That would be acceptable, he replied. An hour later, Zekmore found himself in his ship's main conference room, facing Admiral Davis across a metal table. The human looked relaxed and confident, but not arrogant. There was something in his eyes that Zekmore recognized from his own mirror after difficult battles, the look of a professional soldier who understood the cost of war. "Admiral," Zekmore began, "I must ask you something. Why have you not destroyed my fleet? You clearly have the power to do so." Davis leaned back in his chair. "Because destroying your fleet wouldn't solve the real problem. You're just the tip of the spear. Behind you is an entire empire that thinks Earth is easy prey. If I destroy you, they'll just send a bigger fleet. And if they do, then we'll destroy that one too," Davis said simply. "Admiral, let me be completely honest with you. What you've seen today is just our normal peacetime military readiness. If the Zephyrian Empire declares full war on Earth, we will mobilize our entire population, all 8 billion humans. Our war production will increase by factors you can't imagine." Zekmore felt a chill run through his body. 8 billion soldiers? Not soldiers. Warriors. There's a difference. A soldier fights because he's ordered to. A warrior fights because his home is threatened. Admiral, you came here to conquer and enslave us. Every human on this planet now knows that. What do you think 8 billion angry humans are capable of? The alien admiral considered this. In 47 conquests, he had never faced a species that was willing to fight with their entire population. Most worlds surrendered when they realized resistance was hopeless. "What do you propose?" Zekmore asked. "Simple. You're going to return to your empire and tell them the truth about Earth. All of it. Our real military strength, our capabilities, and our willingness to fight to the last person if necessary. They will not believe me." "Then bring proof," Davis said. He activated a small device that projected a holographic recording. "This contains complete documentation of everything you've seen here. Fleet strength, base locations, personnel numbers, everything." Zekmore stared at the device. "You're giving me intelligence about your own military? Admiral, after today, do you really think it matters if your empire knows our capabilities? You've seen what we can do. The question is whether your leaders are smart enough to avoid a war they cannot win." War Commander Vexithara entered the conference room, escorted by 2 human Marines. She looked as shaken as Zekmore felt. "War Commander," Davis said, "I understand you were responsible for the initial intelligence gathering on Earth." "Yes," she replied quietly. "I have failed completely. My report was wrong about everything. Actually, your report was quite accurate for what you were looking for," Davis said. "You observed our major, obvious installations and made reasonable estimates based on what other worlds typically have. The problem is that Earth isn't like other worlds." "How?" she asked. Captain Morrison entered the room and took a seat at the table. "War Commander, may I ask you something? On the worlds your empire conquered, how many different nations or governments did each planet have?" "Usually 1, Vexithara replied. "Sometimes 2 or 3 if the world was divided by conflict." "Earth has 195 separate nations," Morrison said. "Each one has spent centuries developing its own military to fight the others. What you saw as 12 military bases were actually just the ones we wanted you to see." "Admiral," Davis pulled up another holographic display showing Earth from space. Instead of the 12 points of light the aliens had originally detected, the planet now showed thousands of glowing dots representing active military installations. "We have been fighting each other for over 5,000 years, Davis explained. "Every weapon system, every tactical doctrine, every military strategy we possess was developed to fight other humans. We are very, very good at war because we've been practicing it constantly. Until today," Morrison added. "Today, for the first time in human history, all of our military forces are working together instead of against each other." Zekmore understood now why the human numbers were so staggering. "You're not one world with one military. You're nearly 200 worlds worth of military power all on one planet." "Exactly," Davis said. And Admiral, we want you to deliver a message to your empire. Earth is not available for conquest, but we are available for trade, diplomacy, and friendship. You would consider peaceful relations? Vexithara asked, surprised. War Commander, we don't want to fight you. We want to learn from you. Your technology, your knowledge of other species, your perspective on the galaxy. But those things have to be freely shared, not taken by force. Zekmor thought about this. The Zephyrian Empire had always taken what it wanted through conquest. The idea of voluntary cooperation was foreign to their way of thinking. What if my empire chooses war anyway? He asked. Davis's expression became deadly serious. Then, we will show them what 8 billion humans can do when they're fighting for their survival. Admiral, your empire has conquered 47 worlds, but you've never fought a species that views war as its primary cultural activity. We would mobilize everything, Morrison added. Every factory would produce weapons. Every human would become a soldier. We would build ships faster than you could destroy them and replace soldiers faster than you could kill them. More importantly, Davis continued, we would win. And when we did, we wouldn't just defend Earth. We would free every world your empire has conquered. The threat hung in the air between them. Zekmor realized that the humans weren't just offering peace. They were offering the complete destruction of the Zephyrian Empire if war continued. I will deliver your message, he said. Finally. Good, Davis replied. But Admiral, there's one more thing. We're keeping War Commander Vexithara here as our guest. What? Vexithara stood up in alarm. You said you wanted peace. We do, Morrison said. But we also want someone from your empire to see how humans really live. You've spent your career conquering primitive worlds. We want you to understand what a peaceful, advanced civilization looks like. Davis smiled. War Commander, you're going to spend the next 6 months touring Earth. You'll see our cities, our schools, our factories. You'll meet our families and learn our culture. Then you'll return to your empire with a complete understanding of what humanity is really like. And if I refuse? Then you'll stay here permanently as our prisoner, Davis said calmly. But I don't think you'll want to refuse. I think you'll find Earth much more interesting than any world you've helped conquer. 3 days later, Admiral Zekmor stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Zephyrian fleet prepared to leave the solar system. Around them, human ships maintained a respectful distance, but their presence was a constant reminder of Earth's overwhelming strength. Admiral, Captain Veltar said quietly, what will you tell High Command? Zekmor looked at the holographic device Admiral Davis had given him, containing proof of everything they had witnessed. The truth, that we have discovered a species more powerful than our empire, that conquest of their world is impossible, and that we must choose between friendship and destruction. Do you think they will listen? Zekmor thought about the thousands of human ships, the millions of soldiers, and the 8 billion people willing to fight to defend their world. They had better listen, because if they don't, the Zephyrian Empire will face an enemy unlike anything we have ever encountered. As his fleet jumped back into hyperspace, Zekmor carried with him the knowledge that the galaxy had changed forever. The age of easy conquest was over. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage and they were ready for anything. Behind them, War Commander Vexithara stood on the observation deck of an Earth ship, watching her fleet disappear into the distance. For the first time in her life, she wondered what it would be like to live in a world where strength was used to protect, rather than conquer. She was about to find out.